First of all, thank you very much, Ron, for the very kind words, and same back at you. I don't remember talking about Telcar Parsons with you. That must have been a bad dream. I can see talking about Gramsci with you, Marx, Weber, Fanon, Parsons. Boy, wow. I guess I repressed that one. But in any event, I'm sure we did. Well, in any event, I remember very well those conversations and the first times we met. You were new and I was new. I mean, we're not, in terms of how long we've been at this profession, we both started pretty much around the same time. And so for me, it was really exciting to run into someone who was just as energetic and excited about the notion that sociology is very important, not only as an academic profession, but also something that needs to be applied, needs to be public, and needs to be part of social change. To borrow from the old man, as he once said, the purpose of philosophy, same about sociology, is not to think about the world, but to change the world. I know I distorted what he just said, what Marx said, but to get the point. It's something that that we're both very much in agreement about, and so every year that I've gone to the conference, it's always been, for me, an exciting part, whether he's come from Rich from Wilmer, or come all the way from Luther, from Decker this time, to be here with us, that we have this opportunity to spend some time together and engage in discussions that are very difficult for us to find in these times, because we're so busy in our academic lives that we don't have time for those kind of conversations. That's first of all, thank you, Ron. Thank you to the committee, Elizabeth Shield and others who, Sue Sardana, Bordeloy, Bridget Conlin, all of you who worked on putting together this conference. I think it's been a really great conference and some really dynamic panels. The number of student panels at the undergraduate level has just been really exciting and dynamic. The interaction between undergraduate and faculty has been really exciting. And of course, I also just want to give a little shout out to the social responsibility students and in the master's program who showed up here, and did some really outstanding panels as well. So I'm really pleased to see that, and I'm really very pleased that so many of you came from so far away, like Minneapolis. Yes, I am being sarcastic. But that you came out here and showed support, not just for the sociologists of Minnesota, but also for St. Cloud State University. I just wanted to speak, I know I only was asked to speak for about 15 minutes, it might take a little bit longer, but what I wanted to do is just kind of give you kind of a brief overview of kind of how I view my role as a public sociologist. And it's not an easy role. We live in times that I don't think I have to explain to you. The rule of the market is heavier than it's ever been in the education world. The so-called education marketplace. By employing corporate values, strategies, and ethics, and by the way, what I'm doing here is quoting from that article, or that chapter from the volume on community, and it's titled "Engaging Neoliberal Community Engagement." And it's an article that's actually quite critical of the way in which community engagement is conceptualized on a neoliberal university today. By employing corporate values, strategies, and ethics and policies, higher education not only supports business and industry, it has itself become a corporation. Yet during the same time period, and basically in the last decade, university administrators interestingly tout campus-based community engagement as their trademark. It's kind of an interesting paradox. Neoliberal logic, the notion that the market can be the panacea for everything, essentially removes or peripheralizes spaces where challenges to capitalist ideology on university campuses can be developed. These are the kind of conversations that Ron and I were having that I remember the best. Promoted and acted upon, all the while encouraging students and faculty to use so-called critical thinking skills as they become so-called community engaged. Put another way, university-based community engagement, as Randy Stalker has argued, means little if it involves those who have no experience in community organizing. Community engagement typically channels students into one or another form of social service or involvement in the entrepreneurial enterprise of marginalized groups. However, the kinds of critical thinking that lead to collective acts of defiance, again here borrowing from people like Francis Fox Piven and Richard Cloward in their famous work, Poor People's Movements, that collective acts of defiance against structures of economic, political, and social power are not on the agenda of university administrators and is not what they mean by community engagement. But I unapologetically say that that's exactly how I engage and think about community engagement and public sociology. It's precisely the type of counter-hegemonic thinking and action deeply critical of the neoliberal ethic that is almost entirely missing from the community engagement discourse on most U.S. campuses, and this is what I argue in this chapter in that volume. To borrow from Michael Buravoy, who really got the notion of public sociology going, and we have two guests from University of Minnesota, winners of the prize, the Carolyn Rose Prize, and we have Emily Hearn here also, who won honorable mention, who was part of a class of mine that got involved, and you'll see shortly, I'll show you a video of it, involved in a protest of poultry workers fighting for safer health conditions and the like last April. And University of Minnesota is really where there's a lot of thinking about public sociology, a lot of excitement about the notion. And I had the privilege of actually giving a talk at Ron Amanzadi's graduate class a few years ago on public sociology, and actually that's where I got thinking about this paper, which eventually turned into an article in the Cambridge Service Handling Learning Handbook. So shout out to Ron for that. Please bring back my thanks to him. Michael Buravoy says, in the global South, as I have intimated, sociology has often a strong public presence. Visiting South Africa in 1990, this was written a while ago, of course, I'm dating myself, I was surprised to discover the close connection between sociology and the anti-apartheid struggles, especially the labor movement, but also diverse civic organizations. While in the United States we were theorizing social movements, in South Africa sociologists were actually making social movements. That's not unique to South Africa. I mean, Frances Fox Piven's entire book is based on her role as a sociologist with her late husband in creating the welfare rights movement in the 1960s and early 1970s. But in any event, that's the way I think about public sociology, is that it requires us to go beyond the classroom. It requires us to actually get involved in and bring our students in to get involved in actions that challenge the capitalist hegemonic way of thinking and acting, capitalist power structures, and also organize those who are unorganized. I mean, that's essentially the argument that the South African sociologists were guided by, and certainly Frances Fox Piven. I started teaching as an adjunct in 2004 in Minneapolis, and I had just moved from Hawaii with my wife, and I was finishing my PhD, and I was working as an adjunct, and I put together an organization called the Twin Cities Labor Academic Solidarity Committee, TCLAC for short. And that was the idea of that was just to put together academics, a network, to be ready on a moment's notice to go to picket lines and strike lines. And I thought this was a real way of developing academics' capacity to show movements of the working class that we're ready to be there and show support. I remember once in a theory class in social responsibility, a student asked me, well, what do we do? What do you do when you show up? What do I do? And I said, well, you just walk. You show up, you're a body. I said, you're not an academic, you're not a student, you're a body. Movements need bodies. That's what we're contributing. I said, if someone asks you what you think, you can tell them what you think, but otherwise, I said, you're not obliged to do anything but show up. That's what people need is support. Movements live and die by is support from the public, especially movements of the poor. In any event, as I got a job up here in St. Cloud, I should backtrack just a second. What I ended up doing with that group was bringing them in 2006 to all these different immigrant rights marches that were taking place. And of course the big one, I think it was in September of 2006, was culminated in some tens of millions of immigrants coming out of the shadows, many largely undocumented, coming out of the shadows and demanding a presence in the debate on immigration and immigration rights in response to the Sensenbrenner bill and the efforts of him to felonize immigration. Well, being up here in St. Cloud now as a full-time professor, that wasn't very practical. So I thought, well, what can I do up here? I thought I put together a faculty research group on immigrant workers. And for 7 years, we put on a Global Goals Local conference. And that conference's purpose was to bring together academics and community members and critically immigrant workers. Not just immigrants, but immigrant workers. And for immigrant workers to come and talk to students, not about how they're just victims, but about how they're agents of political and social change, how they've collectively organized, and how they've fought and made real changes in one power in the workplace and in their communities. And the majority of the people who were coming up and doing those kind of panels came from the Twin Cities, especially organizations like State Tools and Take Action and Knock and the like. Minneapolis has a very well developed infrastructure for organizing and organizational consciousness. St. Cloud, on the other hand, has a very well developed social services infrastructure, but it does not have a very highly developed social political organizing or community organizing, much less working class based organizing consciousness. And one of the things I hoped to accomplish from that conference was bringing together people to start a dialogue, or as they like to say now these days, change the narrative from social services to organizing, and organizing low-wage workers and organizing immigrant workers especially. And 3 years ago, after putting on that conference for 4 years, myself and a number of others, that's not really English, is it? A number of others and I got together in the community and talked about it's time for us to put together a worker center, an organization that trains workers on how to organize in the workplace where they don't have a union. And this is especially for low-wage workers. And we knew there are models down in the cities to borrow from and models from around the country to borrow from, where worker centers are organizing workers who are difficult for ordinary trade unions to organize and need to be organized. That organization came to be known as the Greater Minnesota Worker Center. And originally it started out as a group of volunteers, one of whom is Ahmed Ali here, and who's raising his hand, who served on our board. He served on our board for 2 years, was part of leading a massive demonstration on a freezing cold day in late November of 2014, calling against a temporary agency that was abusive towards Somali workers and channeling them to the lowest paying jobs and firing them from jobs like at Golden Plump and the like without any explanation. And on that day, we had almost 80 people out marching in the freezing cold. The level of dedication to get 80 people out in that kind of weather was reflected in an SEIU organizer who came up to me and said to me, "Steve, let's get this over with." You never hear a trade union organizer saying, "Let's get an action over with," but it was that cold, and a Minnesotan one, no less. But it was that cold. But that shows you how much anger in the Somali community, but also in the community at large. At once, knowledge was known about this injustice, and we did this simply as volunteers. Ahmed was a board member, I was a board member, and there's a handful of board members who came up with these ideas about how to organize meetings with workers, low-wage workers, Somali workers in particular, and educate them about what rights they have and what we can do to help them. Instead of them coming to us and saying, "What can we do? What can you do for us?" we tell them we can't do anything for you, but we can help you. Help you train yourselves how to organize and train others how to organize and go right to the workplace and demand change, and we'll be backing you. That's what we can do. And we did that with no money. It was all volunteer work and board members. In 2014, at the end, in December, we fired Ahmed from the board, and we made him a staff organizer, a lead staff organizer, actually. And he was the first staff organizer. We hired another organizer, Alicia Williams, and both of them were graduates of St. Cloud State University, and Alicia was a graduate of sociology. And then since then, we've hired 2 other organizers. Alicia's gone on to do a master's degree in social work in Nevada, and we've hired 2 other organizers, one a Spanish-speaking organizer and another African-American woman named Nita Jones, and I'll come back to her in a little bit. But we've expanded from being a board-driven organization with no budget to an organization that has somewhere between about $150,000 to $200,000 a year budget. And much of that has come from, quite honestly, a lot of work that I put into writing these grants. And my son always, my 13-year-old son will ask me, Daddy, how much are you getting from these grants? He hears all about these grants I write. I said, nothing. And he looks at me and says, I don't understand. You write all these grants and you're not getting something. I'm not doing it for myself. I said, this isn't about me. This is about the organization. That's how far we've come. We've been able to, through our work and our ability to organize and just literally change a narrative in St. Cloud, where now, today there's going to be 2 actions taking place. One at Super America by our organization, and I'll come back to that in a minute, and then another just after that by an organization called Unite Cloud, which is organizing in response to the retaliatory hate messages and acts going against the Somali community. And I can tell you, 4 or 5 years ago, these kinds of actions, the idea of mass actions, the idea of organizing people together and putting out a mass action was just almost foreign. And I don't want to steal all the credit for it, but I do want to say that the Greater Minnesota Workers Center and also that research group that we put together did something to change the narrative here in this city. And I think it's a very important narrative that had to change, because I'm convinced, as I understand the social structure of capitalism and the history of capitalism, that social services are not enough. It's very important to win social services and have social services, but those social services are won by battles and struggles, by the powerless, by the unorganized. And we know that historically, going long back, not only in the United States history, but globally, everywhere where capitalism has developed. That's been the trend. I just wanted to share with you just what this looks like. And to give you a sense, I wanted to just pull up a video actually it's all ready to go, of an action that we did last April at Golden Plump corporate headquarters.
Each year, thousands of workers are killed and millions more are injured. 150 people die every day from hazardous conditions on the job.
Thank you for coming up here in such large numbers and showing support for workers at Golden Plump. The working conditions are not safe, they're not healthy, and they're not fair. And on top of that, they're also intimidating.
We stand in solidarity with GMP workers who work in unsafe conditions with unfair firing practices, poor wages, and so much more.
These are the most awesome people in St. Cloud. They come from all walks of life. Please meet Omar Hassan. Please come. My name is Omar Abdullahi Hassan.
قاعد بكون كلام جدا لا فيش حملي كبعد واحد يقول هذا فكون يقول هذا كوكا قاعد بشقة فكون قاعد ما لابس فكون كل هذا الاسبوع نوعي كوكا يقول قاعد بشقة أنا قاعد بحمل اسبوع مركا كبعد يقول هذا السيد تدرب هو السيد هاي مركا ولا أقوم تبغى أقوم تدرب قوم أنا وقدر أنا واحد أكتر ولا بلو كيس أنا يجتهد ما أكتر أقول ولا فرت ما أقول لكن كنا 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 نورد بس ما نقول كي تقرب ما يدري أكتر ويساعد وعينا النبر وين بلو وركي حتى ما وركي ما كبعد يوم فوق جدين قرب كويس كبعد مركا قدم مرجس هو كان واحد يقول هذا قعدت بشقة هانجا قعدت لبس ساعة ساعة كل شقة فكونك أول مركا أول داود نقول مركا تم بقول صافة إذا سوى من بيقول جوي من بيقول جوي بعد كده نجح على شيء كبعد عن تغيير من هاي واحد يقول بقول من الوقت وأنا ما قلت له أنا ما ودي أخذ يعني بس أخذ يعني كأبو سلام ماشي وحي لا أنت في يودي ما حصل الله هذا الإنسان كان أنا يفهم ما كان سلسلة صدرنا أنا سيرة كتير
And that's how I lost my job. And right now, I'm seeing medical services and being seen by a doctor.
We're here at Golden Plum, or GMP as it's known for short, because we just got done conducting a survey of over 50 workers that confirm that they see that there are very serious issues of health and safety violations and also religious discrimination. And the organizing committee of workers from GMP would like to sit down with GMP management and discuss these issues and find a way to make work at GMP safe and healthy.
I'm a student at St. Cloud State University, and I want all of the workers at GMP and other meatpacking places to know that students care about the St. Cloud community, and we care about workers that are suffering physically, mentally, and emotionally from GMP's unsafe workers' conditions. We stand in solidarity. Thank you for showing up today, everyone. It's a great event.
One of my star students there, Maddie, who ended there with the coda. What was really amazing about that event was that, and Ahmed can tell this story better than me, but he had originally done all the work that an organizer has to do, and any organizer can tell you, no matter how well you do your organizing, you always have to expect the unexpected unexpectedly. And sure enough, he had lined up two what he thought were guaranteed workers who were presently working at Golden Plum to talk about the unsafe work conditions and also the lack of religious accommodations. And that morning, they both called him and had reasons for not showing up, for not being able to show up. One's wife was having a baby, the other one had to deal with his wife being sick or something or whatever came up. And so we thought, well, we'll just have to rely on workers who haven't worked there. Because we don't want to put any other workers at risk of losing their jobs. And what happened actually was that two women workers who had just come off the line and a male worker who had also just come off the line that morning were ready to go. They came up to Ahmed and they said, we want to talk. I think the reason why they wanted to talk was because when they got there to that rally, they saw the work that not only fellow workers had done, the workers committee had done, that the Greater Minnesota Workers Center had done, but also students from my class in Sociology 460 had done to get people out there from the community to show support, to make them feel like they're not alone. And suddenly these workers who once were afraid to speak out publicly or even with their friends about what was going on in the workplace now were publicly speaking to the media about what was happening, and they personally delivered the letter to management themselves, and they did not get fired. And that had a huge impact on their fellow workers, seeing that they didn't get fired and that you could stand up for your rights and you could still continue to work. And as we put it at the Greater Minnesota Workers Center, actually you're more danger by not speaking out than by keeping quiet, or rather than by speaking out. Worker management is more afraid of people who speak out than who don't speak out. Occasionally they will certainly try retaliation, but when they've done so, we've come back with rallies and gone straight to the companies, in this case Super America, and let them know under no uncertain terms that as a community we're not going to tolerate any company that retaliates against workers, especially low-wage workers who are just fighting for their basic right to a decent workplace and a decent wage.
One other place where we've done our organizing has been at Super America. And as I said, even though we're an immigrant-focused or refugee-focused worker organization, we also focus on workers who are, quote-unquote native-born, and that's an increasingly murky concept, of course. We have Somalis and Sudanese and Vietnamese and Hmong who've been in St. Cloud now for 3-4 generations. They're as native as are the white population. But regardless, here we're talking about largely a population of African American and white workers in Super Americas that have been spreading like wildfire in St. Cloud. And we started organizing them when Alicia Williams was just talking with Super America workers and finding out that they were very concerned about low wages, very unfair scheduling practices, and also dangerous work conditions. And it's easy to imagine how a factory is a dangerous place, a poultry line is a dangerous place, but a Super America convenience store, that's kind of hard to imagine. But then if you look at it from the perspective of somebody who's working an overnight shift and the possibility of being robbed at gunpoint, that workplace is as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than a poultry line. And so we've been organizing in the same manner, putting together workers' committees and tasking them with the job of getting fellow workers to sign petitions, to get word out to the media, and to organize rallies. And once they put out word that the rally is going on, then the Greater Minnesota Workers Center kicks into action with our staff, and we support the rally, and we help to organize the community and the workers to the best of our ability. And I just wanted to give you a clip of that, and what that looks like in the Super America case. And this woman here that you're going to see speak in a minute, Makeda Alexander, is a St. Cloud State Tech University student and with 5 children, and a remarkably brave woman. And so we put together a petition of like about 100 workers or so from Super America here and in the cities, and demanding that they set up a meeting with the workers. And we went to Super America and protested, and then we went right down to their corporate headquarters. And this is what it looked like.
We want Super America to form a health and safety committee to ensure that our workers are safe and protected on the job.
So I know the SOM stores in St. Cloud, they have one overnight. They have one person working overnight, and that's like a big danger zone because you don't know what can happen.
A lot of women were working overnight by themselves, which was very unsafe.
They refused to put glass up to protect the workers, and we want them to have a dialogue in the health and safety committee. Hey! Unfair scheduling, not the way!
At SA, there were surveys done and found that many of the workers were working hours that would change from week to week.
One week you get 30 hours, the next you get 20, the next you get 15. So it's not reliable to support you and your family.
We want to make sure that
the say and what's happening.
We're not leaving till we get a meeting. We're not leaving till we get a meeting. We're not leaving till we get a meeting. We're not leaving till we get a meeting.
You know, I go to school, I work, and when I go to the store and buy a box of cereal and a gallon of milk, I just spend an hour of my wage. And you know, it's just horrible. So this needs to get better, so I can give my children, all 5 of them, a better life to live.
Super America workers, Makeda, countless others have voiced, their demands about sitting down with corporate for better wages, more fairness on the job, health and safety, and now it's time for them to act. This is just the start of this fight, and now what they need to know is that we will be back. We will be back. What? We will be back. We will be back.
That's why it's happening. I'm stepping on the wire. Okay, so there you are. So that's the kind of sociology that I think we all should be doing. I know that it's too much to be asking all of us to be doing it, but I do think it's important that this kind of sociology is more and more commonplace and not something that's distinguished, but something that's indistinguishable. I would love to get an award someday for this kind of work, and the award be for indistinguishable sociologist. But until that day, I'll certainly be, I'm honored to accept this award. I would like to note that today at 3:30 p.m., and this is our poster for this. I think I might be able to make it a little bit bigger. No, I can't. We're having a rally at Super America. There was a robbery about 4 weeks ago at the Super America right across from Electrolux at 33rd and I think 8th Avenue, or 33rd and 7th Avenue, or 7th Street. I can never keep track. It's on the north side. Go to Division to 33rd, turn right, go 7 blocks. You'll find it Super America. You can't miss it, and Electrolux. At 3:30, we're going to be doing a protest and a rally there and a protest of Super America's one-person overnight shift policy. And we've gotten quite a lot of community support for this and promises to show up and be there to support the workers. On the Facebook page for this event, one of the person who says he's coming to this event and will be there is the poor fellow who actually had to endure the gun in his face by himself that night in Super America. And our organizer, Nita Jones, who has put together this rally, or has helped to put together this rally with the workers, has informed me that even the manager of the store has said that he, I think it's a he, will walk out and join the protest. Right across from this Super America is Electrolux, who's a unionized plant, and we do have good relations with the stewards there. And we're expecting some Electrolux workers also to be joining us. So it doesn't stop, and the struggle doesn't end, and neither does sociology. And I'm pleased to be able to be part of it all, and I very much appreciate the support that the Sociology of Minnesota has given to me, my students, and again, this is a great honor, and thank you very much.